So in this lesson, we're going to go over combination unit conversions. So changing something like meters per second into kilometers per hour and vice versa. This is going to help you on your time conversions worksheet. I highly recommend that you get out a piece of paper and do these 3 examples with me, just so you have a better understanding of how to do these. Okay, so we're going to do 3 examples here. One is meters per second to kilometers per hour, and then vice versa, and then a crazy one, which is centimeters per second into kilometers per day. Now, in physics, you are going to be using this meters per second to kilometers per hour and vice versa the most often. So let's start with number 1 here. 14.2 meters per second, and I want to go into kilometers per hour. Now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just multiply this number by a fancy way of writing a 1. Now you know when you multiply something by 1, you don't actually change anything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply it by a fancy 1, which is a conversion between meters and kilometers. Now I know there is 1,000 meters in 1 kilometer. So 1 kilometer over 1,000 meters, when I do that division, it's actually just 1, so it doesn't change anything. And then I'm going to multiply it by another fancy 1, which has 3,600 seconds in 1 hour. And I got that 3,600 by going 60 seconds per minute times 60 minutes per hour. Now I chose to put the kilometers on top and the meters on bottom on purpose so that my meters will cancel, and I'll be left with kilometers on the top, and my seconds will cancel, and I'll be left with hours on the bottom. So you'll notice I'm changing the unit from meters per second into kilometers per hour. And when I do that multiplication, so I go 14.2 times 1 times 3,600 divided by 1,000, I'm going to get 51.12 kilometers per hour. So actually try that on your calculator, make sure it makes sense to you. And with sig figs, here I have 3 sig figs, here I have 4, so I'm going to round this to 3. Now I get the question, here I have 3 sig figs, but 1 and 36 only has 2. Well, here I actually know this is 1 kilometer is 1,000.0 meters. These conversions are very accurate. I know those exactly, so you don't have to worry about those with your sig figs calculations. And that is my answer. Let's try the next one. Here's 60.0 kilometers per hour into meters per second. 60.0 kilometers per hour. Again, I'm going to multiply these by some fancy 1s. Now, here I want kilometers on the bottom and meters on the top. Okay, well 1 kilometer is 1,000 meters. And this way my kilometers will cancel and I'll have meters in the end. Then I'm also going to do fancy 1 here. This time I want hours on top, seconds on the bottom. 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. As we can see, my kilometers cancel, my hours cancel, and I'm left with meters per second. I do that calculation, and I get 16.66 repeating meters per second. Now, rounding this to 3 sig figs, I would get 16.7 meters per second. Now, I'll show you a shortcut that only works when going from meters per second to kilometers per hour. Don't just memorize the shortcut, as you do need to know how this actually works. But going from meters per second to kilometers per hour, as we can see here, you times it by 3,600 and divide it by 1,000. Well, when you do that, 3,600 divided by 1,000 is actually just 3.6. So when you're going from meters per second to kilometers per hour, you multiply the number by 3.6. And in the reverse, here we had 1,000 divided by 3,600. So to go from kilometers per hour to meters per second, you divide by 3.6. But again, this shortcut only works between meters per second and kilometers per hour. So I intentionally included a question that is different. Centimeters per second to kilometers per day. Now, here we're going to set it up the exact same way. 18.3 centimeters per second. And I want to multiply this by fancy ones to convert all of my units into kilometers per day. Well, how many centimeters in a kilometer? I actually don't know that offhand. So I'm going to go centimeters to meters, because I know there's 100 centimeters in 1 meter. And then I'm going to go my conversion, another fancy one, which is going to go from meters to kilometers. Here I know there's 1 kilometer in 1,000 meters. And here, centimeters cancel, meters cancel. I'm left with kilometers per second right now. And then one more fancy one, which will have seconds on top and days on the bottom. So you have to know how many seconds are in a day. So just let me take a moment and calculate that. And you get 86,400 seconds in 1 day. And I got that number by going 24 times 60 times 60, because there's 24 hours per day, 60 minutes per hour, and 60 seconds per minute. And when I do that, I'll notice my seconds cancel, and my overall answer is going to be in kilometers per day. And when you work that out, you get 0.864 kilometers per day.